Hey folks, this is Rabble Rousing Rich Bergeron.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tornado, Tony Panic.
And Psychic Tom Paget with his crystal ball ready to go.
And we have a couple big stories. A lot of waves going around with the UFC. Big event there. I got the main event right with my prediction, but the co-main event, not so much. It was a little bit of a surprise. I was kind of rooting for Davis and Figueiredo, but I wanted Moreno. I picked Moreno to win, but as the fight wore on, I felt like Davison was going to get the knockout. He seemed like he was close, but he just couldn't put enough power on his punches to really to stop Moreno. But I don't know. I thought it was almost close enough for a draw, and nobody would have been upset by it. But the other peculiar thing about fights like that is this is the third fight, and Moreno has won the last two. Doesn't often happen in the UFC. They do something like that. So it's kind of almost like Davison had to win for them to fight again, and everybody seems to like to watch these guys fight. So let's just keep making them fight. I don't know. If this was in Japan, I'd say it was a work. But no, that was just a brilliant fight between the two of them. They know each other so well, and I would watch them fight again. I'm not gonna lie. But I don't know. I thought Moreno did better than the judges gave him credit for, and Figueiredo just kind of had one of those fights where he coasted at certain points, and then he put on the flash just enough to steal some rounds. And if he hadn't come so close to, shutting Moreno's lights out, I don't think he would have got the nod. But sometimes they look at that, they look at who lands the hardest punches, and they forget about all the wrestling and all that grappling and technique. But yeah, Moreno had a tough one. But Ngannou pretty much did what he had to do. Now it's all up to contract negotiations and all that. But we've got an interesting development. I don't know what to believe on the stuff I've seen on Facebook, but immediately after the fight, there's all kinds of crap going around about Francis Ngannou is going to get sued because he was talking to Jake Paul, and he's going to do a boxing match, and he's still technically under contract. And right away, I kind of was like, bullshit meter. If that's true, I want to see the lawsuit. And it was like the UFC was going to, and I haven't seen them pull the trigger on that yet. I don't think that's actually going to happen. But what I did see was Jake Paul has supposedly spent 95% of his net worth to buy Endeavor shares. Endeavor is the parent company of the UFC, so it's not a joke. He's partnered with another guy who I believe was a billionaire to do this, and obviously you're not going to take controlling interest over the UFC. Anybody can buy into the UFC as a public company, Endeavor, and say they own the UFC, but it's kind of a defensive move at the same time, I believe, because how is the UFC going to sue Jake Paul if Jake Paul owns the UFC? How are they going to sue their co-owner if he rubs them the wrong way? So I think that's maybe why he did it, but he's not ever going to say that. So Francis, if he gets sued, I don't know. I'm thinking he's just going to go back and sign a new contract. But he is pissed off, and he has been kind of made the kingmaker. You're the head of the fighting organization, if there ever is going to be one. Like he's the figurehead for this issue now, with fighter pay. So the thing is, he wants to box.
Always did.
Yeah,
remember that MMA was never his goal. When he got to France, he wanted to start boxing there, but I guess it was just coincidence that the trainer that took him in convinced him to go MMA. But he always wanted to be a boxer.
Right.
So now I see, and I see what you meant about that contract. I guess the rules are he either has to defend the belt 3 times or wait a year and then get released. But at 35, does he? He's kind of getting up against it. But
right.
Who knows what he'll do? So you think he's going to sign another contract and give up on boxing?
I think he will, because he's going to be threatened with
That
all
would
kinds
be awful for him.
legal, battles if he doesn't.
Well, okay, but what if he just sits for a year and does nothing, and then he's released?
He could do that.
Well, I would think if he could go into boxing and at like a fight with, and I don't know if he'd ever get a chance to fight Fury if he'd jump on the line.
Well, this is where I think Jake Paul is going to abandon the whole thing with this fighter pay thing. You're not even going to hear about it anymore with Jake Paul. You might hear about it a little. He might just do it for shits and giggles, but now that he's part of the UFC, I think he's trying to sneak his way into creating their Zuffa boxing for them. Because he has a relationship with Showtime, and he went from Triller to Showtime pretty quickly, and having no real boxing experience. So I think that's his angle too. That's another angle of his, and they might find a way to appease him in both categories. And they have this. It's not unheard of. They did it with Conor McGregor. They let him box, and they did it with another promoter, Mayweather Promotions, and Leonard Elvey, and Al Heyman. They are all involved. So they could do it with Francis if they're smart about it. And the guy that Dana White called a warlock a few weeks ago might be the kind of guy that would be able to get in Dana's ear and say, listen, I know you're kind of pissed that I went with the Fertitas, but now Jake and I are with you. They could do some maybe good things together, but that means they're going to forget about the whole fighter pay thing, those two. Jake Paul is going to all of a sudden be like, oh no, fighters are getting paid great. But I don't know. Maybe I'm selling them short, but we're going to find out. Because this Francis Ngannou thing, I don't think is good for the UFC to let fester. They're going to want to nip it in the bud as soon as possible, because this issue is already probably giving Dana White white hair, and he doesn't have any hair.
Well, and then remember the heavyweight divisions. It's just so important. I mean, just like in boxing, as the heavyweight division goes, so goes boxing.
And you've already got John Jones pissed off.
What a mess this is, because if Ngannou's done, and John Jones may never fight again.
Yeah.
So what's going on? Mess this is.
Yep. So anyway, the two co-main event and the main event were pretty decent scraps. I kind of fell asleep because it was like 2 a.m. when the Ngannou fight was in the 5th round. But the first few rounds I managed to stay awake for, and I could see the tide turning towards Ngannou. Cyril is just he's like one of those guys. He's so technical. He never wants you to get a glimpse of him looking like he's actually in a fight. He just always wants to be so relaxed and composed that he lets himself get in too much of a lull, and he doesn't press the action when he should. I mean, he's a lot like the Czech Congo I used to complain about all the time. But he comes in there so beefed up and in such good physical shape, and then he just goes out there and wrestle fucks for 8 hours. You think he's gonna?
Well, I had it even going into the last round, but couldn't stop the takedowns. I don't know if it was a lack of technique on his part. I mean, never seen him doing much of or something. But again, sometimes strength can just overcome technique.
Yeah.
And Ngannou's the takedowns were certainly nothing. It was great wrestling. It was just pick him up and just throw him down. So.
Well,
strange.
You get points taken away in boxing for that, so I hope he can break that habit if he is going to box. Anyway, we also had Michael Pereira getting a win over Andre Fiallo. That was a unanimous decision. Another one I predicted correctly. Don't ever bet against Nurmagomedov. Saeed, 47 seconds. Guillotine choke. I picked him correctly on a couple cards. 2 out of 3, I believe. Beat Cody Stamann pretty quick by guillotine choke. And Michael Morales before that was the one you really had to have. I had Trevin Giles, unfortunately. It was like one guy was $15, the other guy was $16. So I put them on the third card, Morales, and everybody else on that card lost. He TKO'd his guy 4:06 into the first. And the big surprise, Raoni Barcelos was one of the most expensive fighters from Brazil. Pretty good knockout artist. And Victor Henry comes in with very unorthodox fighting style. Fought pretty much all over the place. And just totally dominated. Unanimous decision. Beat Raoni up. And was one of the most impressive performances for the announcers. They were talking about it too. Like, even though it was a decision, that Victor Henry really just surprised a lot of people. Another guy that was expensive but did pay off, Jack Della Maddalena, and I had to pick him when I looked at Pete Rodriguez's opponent. Pretty much no UFC experience. I mean, Della Maddalena doesn't really have much either. Dana White's fight night or whatever, but 2 minutes and 59 seconds into the first round to get the TKO, so that was expected. Tony Gravely, I picked him correctly over Simon Oliveira, but it was a unanimous decision. You got to get TKOs to win the money. And I think I had my best lineup. I had the one loss, which was Gagne in the main event, and he was in MVP slots. That's not good. You got to double your money. Anyway, Matt Frevola was another one I missed. He got a TKO in the first round over Gennaro Valdez. And Vanessa Demopoulos over Silvana Gomez Juarez. She got armbar submission 2 minutes and 25 seconds in to the first. And, I had picked Juarez on a couple lineups, unfortunately. And I also picked Kay Hansen on another lineup. She lost the first fight of the night against Jasmine Juza-Devicius. But Vanessa Demopoulos did something pretty funny at the press conference, and right after the fight, she actually jumped right into Joe Rogan's arms during the post-fight interview. And then it kind of made sense in the post-fight because she was telling everybody that she won the fight with her stripper guard. Turns out for 13 years she was an exotic dancer. And she literally told everybody at the press conference that it helped her jiu-jitsu being a pole dancer all those years. A lot of leg strength, hanging off the pole. So yeah, I thought that was comical. Anyway, but hey, stranger things have happened. Anyway, she really surprised. She scrapped it out. She was kind of getting thrown around a little bit, and she just grabbed onto that arm and got that armbar. It was one of the best early fights. But I did not pick her on any of my lineups. That was the one female fight they had to have. All right. I did have a good lineup on football this weekend. Talk about games. I mean, unbelievable action. So, this is probably something you might have escaped you when you were watching the Chiefs-Bills game. But I I got a thing with number 47 and the number 13. So it's a long story. But anyway, 13 seems like every time I don't pick a 13 in my lineup, one of the 13s goes nuts in football. So I picked both 13s in the Buffalo and Chiefs game. And one of them happened to be the guy who scored like 48 points there, Gabriel Davis for the Bills.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I had him in my lineup. And I also had Byron Pringle. And believe it or not, this had probably never happened. The announcers didn't even realize it. The 13th point of each team's scoring was scored by number 13. Because it was when Gabriel Davis got his touchdown, that 6 points that he scored made it 13 to whatever. And then the next guy, Pringle, when he got the touchdown, it was 13 points for Kansas City. I don't think that's ever happened in a game. I doubt it. It's a new statistic. But yeah, I had both guys. If I didn't make a couple little mistakes, I would have probably been in the top 1,000. But yeah, it was exciting for a little while.
Yeah, and like they were really pulling for Buffalo because I played against their coach in high school.
Oh, I was pulling for him too because I predicted they would
talk
win.
About a cursed franchise. I mean, like they went Bulls in the early '90s and lost all 4 of them. One of them by a field goal that was wide right by about 5 feet, if not less than that. And then it's like each year they progressively got beat even worse. A couple years
I was at the Air
later,
Force
they
Academy
had
when they lost to the Cowboys that year. That one year.
That was a bad loss.
Oh.
That was like, both of them were bad.
Yeah.
You had the Music City Miracle against the Titans that time where it really was a forward pass, not a backward lateral, and they got screwed on that. And then someone's like, and then you get 20 years of being in the same division with Tom Brady. It's like, you can't win.
What Tom got hit in the mouth.
I didn't talk to her at all this week.
But what an almost comeback he had.
I saw that.
That was fabulous.
I didn't email my one former coworker from my client office because it would be like talking to her this week would be like kind of like stirring up the air because from Buffalo, diehard fan, long-suffering fan, and I'll tell you right now, she can tell me how much she hates Tom Brady. She's like trying to have to play him twice, 2 times a year for 20 years, and tell me how much you think you hate him? We really hate him in Buffalo. So finally, it's like
I think he comes back one more year.
He
wants that Super Bowl.
and then it's
Wants
like
the last one.
next thing you know, it's like you're out. 13 to go. But I'll tell you right now, the defensive coordinator for Buffalo should be fired because what were you doing?
13 seconds.
First thing you should have did was either
Speaking of 13, yeah.
you should have squib kick or pop up kick and make them run because that would take, even if they got up to the 35-yard line, that would have taken 7 or 8 seconds off the clock, and now you leave them with 5 seconds for one play. Even one play. They kicked through the end zone, so now that takes no time off the clock. Casey's got their timeouts, and you're playing prevent defense. You were giving up 20-yard completions. If they had no timeouts, that would work.
Yeah.
They had timeouts. That's the worst strategy ever. Horrible, horrible, horrible. He'd be fired.
Yeah.
And the guy that was covering would not even be allowed back on the box.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just unreal. I mean, if I hadn't been watching it, I would have said, no, that didn't happen. But it did. And, of course, there was a meme made out of that. Don't ever let your girl say 13 seconds isn't enough.
Yep.
Anyway, we got a Bellator fight coming up this weekend. Main event: Ryan Bader and Valentin Moldavsky. Bader 28-7. Moldavsky is 11-1. And this is a heavyweight bout. And another UFC vet, Benson Henderson, in the co-main event. He's 28-11, fighting Islam Mamedov, who is 21-1. 20 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. And our former guest, high up on the card here, Henry Corrales, 19-6 with his new teeth. And, fighting Aiden Lee, who's 10-5. That's a good matchup for Henry. I hope he takes care of business pretty quickly there. Love to see that. Anyway, 8th fight of the night, Saba Homasi, 15-10, fighting Jaleel Willis, who's 15-3. That seems like a little mismatch. Darian Caldwell, 15-5, fighting Enrique Barzola. Dropping the mic. Enrique Barzola. He is 16-5-2. And Saeed Awad, 24-13. There we go, 13-1. Fighting Christopher Gonzalez, who's 6-1. And not The Rock, but Dwayne Johnson, 6-2 at middleweight, fighting Dalton Rosta, who is 5-0. And then Nikita Mikhailov, 7-1, fighting Blaine Chute, 8-5. It's bantamweight. Featherweights, Lucas Brennan, 5-0, fighting Ben Lugo, who's 5-4. And then the featherweights in the second fight, Weber Almeida, 5-1, fighting Fabricio Franco, who's 8-4. First fight is a light heavyweight fight, Sullivan Colley, 2-0, fighting Ben Parrish, who is 5-1. And that's it. Box Rec. Alright. We had last Thursday. No, this Thursday. Tonight, Sergio Martinez beats Macaulay McGowan. Tonight. I don't know the exact method, but popped right up here. Now, last Saturday, we had a couple big fights. Hugo Centeno Jr. losing to Antonio Todd. Niam Bayar drawing with Zakaria Lucas. Tugstock Niam Bayar. And I actually did see the little bit of a controversy, but crazy little fight between Gary Allen Russell Jr. and Mark Magsayo. And I was kind of pulling for Magsayo just because I had been seeing some stuff on Facebook from one of my old friends from way back in the MySpace days who had been writing a lot about him. Of course, I can't think of the kid's name right now. He writes a lot of boxing stuff, and then he wrote some stuff about him and was following him around a little bit. But Gary Allen Russell, actually, for a one-handed guy, which he ended up having to be in this fight, he did a really good job. And you had to wonder, when you read the scorecards, what could he have done if he had had his jab for most of that fight? Because he really only had a straight left. That's all he had. He wasn't jabbing because he hurt his shoulder. And supposedly his shoulder was hurt going into the fight. And then he jammed it, throwing a punch, and you could see it happen. He was trying to shake it out, and then you could watch the numbers drop. He went from like 10 to 1, and then none for the rest of the fight. He did not throw a jab. It was just straight lefts. And for a little while, it just wasn't working. And then as the fight got later, he was starching him, but just not enough to knock him out. And it was odd because it was just almost all straight punches, and the guy could still not get out of the way of some of them. Like, you know what's coming! And he still couldn't figure it out. But he did just enough to win, and he kind of, I don't know, got lucky in some ways, but in other ways he just did enough. He just took advantage of the fact that there's only one punch coming. Blocked just enough of those snappy lefts. But Gary didn't even really throw hooks. I mean, it's if you're down to one punch, like, obviously it's going to be tough to win the fight. So you got to mix it up a little bit. Like throw some uppercuts, throw some hooks. Like use all angles with that one hand. And he was just throwing straight punches. So I think that's kind of was his biggest problem in trying to get that win. Because everybody's gonna just look at that. That was just a one-dimensional fight on his part, and it had to be, you know. But you can't give him style points because he was injured. Yeah, so I get it that Mark got that fight, but anyways, it was very close, and Russell was impressive late in the fight. But I'm sure they'll do a rematch. Now this weekend.
The undercard fight, that was a hell of a fight.
Which one?
The lead undercard fight? The rematch?
Mateus versus
Ngannou. That's the one.
Yeah.
And you know, Mateus, the thing that worried me about him, especially after, you know, that last loss, was he going to have the Boom Boom Mancini, syndrome, where, you know, you have a fight where, you know, your opponent succumbs to a fatality, and that happened in 2019, and, you know, what happens to you mentally? Like, where do you go? Like, you know, some fighters never recover from it. Boom Boom Mancini was never the same. Gabriel Ellis was never the same. And in Mateus' fight, when he lost, I mean, he was doing well early, and then he started getting hit with some bombs, and he really looked like he was exhausted. Boy, this time he looked sharp. He looked an opponent that had never been knocked down, and he put him down. You know, a beautiful counter left hook. And Mateus, he looked good. He looked, focused. He looked strong. I mean, I was impressed.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start off with the Jesus fight of the week in Colombia. It's the main event. It's the mismatch of the week, too, almost, I guess, even though Jesus has a little bit of a winning record. We got Johan Segura at super featherweight. He's 8-0, fighting Jesus Perez, who is 3-2 Saturday. We got one in France. It's another mismatch. And the main event is kind of interesting. It's for a title anyway. Thomas Foray. He is 20-4 with one draw, fighting Kevin Thomas Kojin, who is 27-10 with two draws. That's for the vacant EBU light heavyweight title. So this is the mismatch here. Middleweights, Frank Zimmer. Frank spelled Franck. New one. He's 10-2, fighting Rafael Bouquet, who is 3-35-1. Has not won in a long time. 3-35-1. Gotta feel bad for those three people. This is a fight in Serbia at heavyweight. Miljan Rovkanin, who is 22-2, fighting Drazan Janjanin, who is 22-33. Yikes. There's nothing else good on that card. Spectacular action yet. A lot of mismatches, boy. There's a card with a 1-25, an 0-12, a 3-20, a 6-29. Man, that's in Florida. Panama City, Florida. They must have got a bunch of people off the beach. Yikes. Find something good here. Here we go. Ohio. Tom. Ohio's got all the good fights this week. Did you know about this? Warren, Ohio.
No.
Packard Music Hall. You're gonna have some big
Oh,
fights.
I've been there.
Heavyweights and cruiserweights. It seems like it's a tournament or something. Jesus. Guys all have titles and stuff. It doesn't say it's televised either, which is weird. Well, we got cruiserweights. Ilunga Jr. Makabu, he's 28-2, fighting Tabiso Nchunu, who is 23-5 for the WBC World Cruiserweight title. Then you got heavyweights. Trevor Bryan, undefeated, 21-0, fighting Jonathan Guidry, who is also undefeated, 17-0-2. So there's somebody's always got to go for the WBA World Heavyweight title there. Then we got another cruiserweight fight. Johnny Langston, 9-3, fighting Nick Kisner, 22-5-1, for the vacant NABA cruiserweight title. And then another heavyweight fight. Ahmed Hefni, who is 13-1, fighting Dakari Scott, who's 6-0. And we got middleweights. Michael Moore, 18-3, fighting Anthony Lenk, who's 17-7. That's for the vacant NABA middleweight title. And then welterweights. Cody Wilson, 10-3, fighting Trayshawn Wiggins, who's 12-5-3, for the vacant NABA welterweight title. So there's only one fight on that whole card that's not a title fight in Ohio. So if you're in Ohio, that's the place to be this week. Tulsa, Oklahoma, got some decent matchups featuring our boy Joey DeWaco. 21-9 with 4 draws, fighting an undefeated heavyweight named Stefan Shaw, 15-0. Tough test for Joey there. Super featherweights in the main event. Robson Conceição, who is 16-1, fighting Xavier Martinez, who's undefeated at 17-0. And then we got lightweights. Juan Rene Tellez, 16-1, and Luis Melendez, 17-1 in the co-main event. A lot of fights on that card, actually. Also in action is Ali's grandson there, Nico Ali Walsh. He's 3-0, fighting a guy who's 1-1-1. So he's been there, done that, got the T-shirt. 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw.
Yeah.
So we'll see. He looked pretty decent the last time, but his opponent was really not trying to give him a good fight, as far as make it easy. So he learned a lot, and he was humble.
So, yeah, he did learn a lot in that last fight. The guy made him work a little bit, but I'll tell you, what's going to be hard for him is, and you see this anytime, somebody is a son or a nephew or a grandson of a true legend. With Marvis Frazier, with his father Joe Frazier. Anytime you have that bloodline, that spotlight is really bright on you. And every little mistake is examined and cross-examined, and and sometimes it's like it's hard to be for a person because you're always trying to live up to a comparison, and you get crushed under the weight of expectations before you even establish yourself.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely got a lot of the right attributes. He's tall, lanky, he's got reach, and he seems to have a good training background. People behind him telling him the right things to do, and you never know. It could really be, the next greatest of all time. We don't know. But obviously there's pressure that, he's going to want him, people are going to want him to be, when maybe he's not. So he's going to figure that out on his own, whether he's going to be able to live up to that. You never know. You never know. So we'll see. Sometimes that kind of legacy will make you work harder. Other times you feel like, well, there's no way I can work hard enough. So, I wish him luck. We'll have to keep an eye on him for sure. Anyway, don't really have any big other news stories. There is some talk, a little bit of talk that there's going to be no step aside for Joshua. I did read some of that coming out. Didn't really see anything confirmatory on that though. So that's kind of all still up in the air, boxing wise. You guys got anything else to add?
Well, that was something I was reading a little bit earlier today too. It's like, it sucks. This whole, well, it doesn't suck because it ended up giving us a good fight, but that arbitrator that gave Deontay Wilder kind of really threw a monkey wrench into those plans because it was supposed to be Fury and Joshua.
Yeah.
But then, Wilder got thrown back in there, so Josh was Usyk. Then he gets beat. It's like, shit. There goes the monkey wrench.
Yep, sometimes it doesn't go as planned.
But you know what? And the fact that, maybe you'll get like that round robin like, you had back in like the 70s. Maybe as high as the, with the Foremans and the Fraziers and the Alis and the Nortons. But, maybe you'll get something like that where these guys are rolling out some.
Oh, before I forget, you guys like what I sent you this morning about the ice fight tournament?
I was reading that. I'm like, that was pretty funny. I'm like, I'd buy tickets to that.
For a second, when I first got that, I was like, are they going to box on ice? What is going on? But no, they're having an actual hockey fight tournament. So instead of going to a hockey game to watch a fight break out, you're going to a fight that's a bunch of hockey players just skipping the hockey and going right to the fighting. And they've done it once before, I guess, and it just didn't catch on. So now they're hoping it's going to catch on. But sounds like a fabulous idea. I hope to have a lot of EMTs in the building. That's all I'm going to say. Aspirin. Oh, so I don't know what the rules are going to be, how they're going to be able to wrap their hands up, or what's going on. They're going to have helmets or not. It's going to be interesting. But I guess I got to see it because that's one of those things I haven't seen on Netflix. But there's like a reference to one of the Netflix documentaries about the hockey team that gave rise to this whole thing. So I guess it's kind of like the WWE of hockey leagues. And this isn't professional hockey players that are going to participate. This is like, the feeder leagues, the minors, these guys. So it's going to be like a real the movie Slapshot. It's going to be those type of guys. So it should be very entertaining. Unfortunately, it probably won't be televised. That could sell some pay-per-views. But anyway, we'll keep everybody updated on that. Yeah. If I could ice skate, I would do it. No, I
that
can't.
throws
Just
me
not
out right now.
Yeah.
My lack of skating ability tosses me right out.
All right, guys. We're going to work really hard to get a guest for next week and see how it goes. Maybe we'll get Iceman on.
Okay, we